Welcome to another episode of Conversations with Black Women in Tech. This is episode 8, and we have another special guest. We have Miss Karla Wallace. She has over 17 years of experience, of technology experience specific to luxury fashion in the beauty space. And she's currently a senior manager, project management e-commerce for one of the nation's top beauty conglomerates. So we're definitely going to get into that and talk about what she's doing now currently and how that resonates in the tech space. And then we're also going to discuss her business that she has on the side. So she has a consulting firm on the side. So I'm interested to hear about that. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you,
Uh,
Khadijah.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you here. So I do want to go back over that again. You are consulting as a senior manager, project management in e-commerce. So can you just explain what exactly your job title, like what do you do?
Sure. So basically, I'm the senior project manager, and overall, I'm kind of the go-between the business. So, like your marketing people, your inventory people, your operations people, and the technical side of the world, your IT, your developers, um, and your designers and things like that. And usually, when there's like a large scale or even a small scale project that collides those two, you need a project manager to come in to make sure that everything is moving smoothly, budgets, times, people are talking to each other. You're just clearing the path so that this project can happen successfully.
So I imagine you are in a lot of meetings. Does your job consist of a lot of meetings?
It does. A lot of meetings and a lot of personalities. You
Yeah,
definitely have to know your audience.
yeah. And you have to manage so many different personalities and make sure that everybody is, communicating.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And what made you decide to go into that field?
So it was an easy transition into just straight project management from where I was before. As you mentioned, I do have experience in fashion and beauty e commerce from the brand perspective. So all of the nuts and bolts of running a website from the initial conception, what are we selling, to products, to the marketing scheme, and all of those front facing customer things that you see when you go to www.myfavoriteplace.com, to the back end pieces of, well, what is this website running on? How much does it cost? How are the systems talking to one another? What are the pieces that are involved in that? So that was my responsibility, and I got into that several years back. Worked in every conceivable role in e-commerce. I did everything from the buying and the merchandising to inventory and management and operations, and really just fleshing out that entire ecosystem of e-commerce so that I knew it well enough to be able to speak to it. Um, and I led e-commerce for a bunch of different fashion businesses. And then fast forward into COVID, with working from home and things like that. A lot of positions needed project managers, and one of the first things that they look for in a project manager is someone that is a relationship builder.
Hmm.
And given my experience overseeing all of e-commerce and all of those moving parts, I knew the parties involved. I knew their stressors. Because I worked in those roles, I knew, what time people had to devote to something and how to communicate what your non-technical person needed to convey to the technical people to get it done. So with that, I was like, this is a easy transition and one that I would like, because it took away some of that business kind of responsibility where I wasn't really responsible for, well, how many widgets are we selling? I could really
Hmm.
just focus on how people can buy the widgets. Is it working? How can we make that experience better? And what are the pieces that we need to make that happen?
Were there any barriers to entry into this field, like switching over from what you did to what you do now?
No, I think because I had that middle experience in overseeing the business as a whole, I was able to transition pretty smoothly. Um, that said, if there was a person that wanted to come into project management from a completely different field, let's say they were a teacher or something completely different, it's definitely doable. Project management is one of those lesser technical type of roles. It's really about those soft skills, relationship building, empathy, time management. Everyone has that in their careers, be it in healthcare, in fashion, wherever. So those are really soft skills that you should focus on if you were ever thinking to transition into project management.
And since you've been in that role, have you found that you've come up with any obstacles being a black woman? Do you think that that's had any play any part in anything that's happened since you've been doing that job?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Being a black woman in tech, even though it's not one of the more techy fields, have you had any type of obstacles or come up against anything that you think was directly related to you being a black woman in tech?
I wouldn't say so. I would definitely say that we are coming into the tech space a lot heavier and definitely diversifying. I think project management in itself is actually a good entry point for people, especially Black women trying to get into the technical space, because we naturally quite often have a lot of those traits, those soft skills that you need. So no, I wouldn't say that there were any barriers per se. I just think that in tech, in honestly in a lot of industries overall, it can sometimes be intimidating to be the only one of us in a room. But that's when that natural black girl magic confidence comes in, and you just wow everybody with your presence.
Yeah. Um, so for the project management, was it? Did you have to go get any type of certifications or anything, or was it just those transferable skills that you had prior to that allowed you to move into that space?
I didn't have to. I did take Google certification for project management just as a little icing on the cake. But anyone looking to enter the field, definitely take a course, get a small certification if you'd like. You don't necessarily have to go into project management thinking you need the PMP, which is the project management credential. You don't really have to go into it knowing that. So don't feel like you can't get your feet wet in project management because you don't have a particular certification. Because again, it's those transferable skills, it's those soft skills that really help you move forward in the project management space. And you can always start entry level, like at a project coordinator or in a junior project manager, to kind of get you a bit more acclimated to systems and things like that.
What was the interview process like? We were trying to talk about that offline. And everybody, I hear these horror stories like, "Oh, I went through, 6 rounds of interviews, and I had a panel interview, and then they still didn't hire me." Was that? Did you have that same experience?
Um, Yes and no, because it depending on, like, if I feel like if I had wanted to go into project management in like a different field, say
Mm-hmm.
for example outside of e-commerce, if I wanted to project manage for healthcare, it might have been a little bit more strenuous.
Hmm.
um, but because this is kind of my field, and I can speak to the industry fluently and kind of am acclimated to the inner workings of it from the different roles that I had. It hasn't been as difficult, but I have heard the stories. And you always just have to, it's hard to say to brush it off, but you just kind of do. Like, keep
Yeah.
your eye on the prize. If that one didn't work, then that wasn't the one for you.
Yeah.
And it's coming. The one for you is coming.
And so, how did you go from that position to now becoming an entrepreneur? What made you decide to start something on the side?
So a few years back, I was at a conference because working for brands, and one of the best kept secrets in fashion is they pay you in clout. So while it may not be as lucrative as you think, but you can walk around the room and say, I work for X, Y, and Z, and a couple of doors will open for you, or a couple of phone calls will happen for you. And I definitely was taught from my CEO to use that, to definitely say, I am the X, Y, and Z of this. Get me into this conference. And while I was at a particular tech conference, I was thinking, there's so many small businesses, friends of mine, things of that nature, that were starting their own little businesses and literally had no idea what they could do online or even be online. Because quite honestly, before 2020, people weren't really clamoring to have a functioning, working business website where they can transact. It was an extra, it was a nice to have, but it wasn't always the must have. And so, as I was taking in all this knowledge from these conferences and things like that, always was like, I would call a friend up that I knew was selling Mary Kay or was doing this and doing that. And I'm like, you could be doing X, Y, and Z. Or if I see a friend that just started a travel business, for example, and I see their site and it's a little bit less optimized than I think would benefit them, I'll call them up and say, listen, you need to do X, Y, and Z. This will help you do that. Make sure that you have, your SEO together, things like that. And it just dawned on me, like, I can be of service to people that are not blessed with this opportunity to come sit in these free conferences, to come get this knowledge. And so that's why I started it a couple of years back, just to help friends and family, and other people that I knew that had like small growing businesses and could do better online.
Okay. And I just wanted to touch on something that you said about the clout. Like, that's definitely important. Like the networking, they always say, you know, networking is your net worth. But I think that networking is more important because it gets you in rooms that you would have never been able to get into. Um,
Absolutely.
it's just that's just the nature of the beast. Like, you meet people and they like, oh hey, I'm you might find out about another conference because you were in a conference that you would have normally never been able to be into, or your company has now paid the fee for you to go. So I think that's very important that people hear that. And I also like to add that people should definitely start networking with people that they're already in, that's already in their circle. A lot of times you try to network up with people that are, you're trying to get in a room with millionaires when it's people beside you and you guys could work together,
Mm-hmm.
network, and build something and go up. So I think that's awesome.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, 100%. I am so huge on relationships.
hmm,
I might say it multiple times tonight, but it's definitely those soft skills. I said this to a colleague a couple of weeks back. I was like, you could teach a monkey how to code. You could teach a monkey the systems. It's those
hmm,
soft skills that's going to take you places. It's that relationship stuff. It's can Are you approachable? Are you willing to learn? Can you ask questions? Can you reach out and say, I don't know, but I'll get you an answer? It's all of those small soft skills that take you places and get you in front of people and tables that you wouldn't expect.
do you have any suggestions or resources for someone listening that wants to get into tech but isn't really sure where to start or where to go?
Definitely. I mean, I think right now the word tech is a buzzword, and
Yes, it
everybody is saying I want to get in tech, but it's such a big field. I think the first thing to do is just really take a step back and write down what you're interested in and what the things are that you gravitate towards. Is it, do you like customer service? Do you like talking to people? Or opposite, do you not like talking to people? Are you math centered? Are you more literary? You know, um, Start listing out adjectives and characteristics of who you are and what would kind of burn passion for you. and then start shaping them around different job descriptions that you see on LinkedIn or different posts that you see, and start to fit some of those pieces into those roles. The worst thing you can do is be somebody who, loves words and loves, communication with other people and helping people, and then say, okay, so I want to be a coder, and you just sit in a room in a box, and you don't need people at all to know code.
Yes.
And that is the best thing for an introvert ever. But if you're extroverted, you're not going to like it.
Yeah.
And you can't really be motivated just by the salaries, because if you don't like it, you're not going to last in it at all.
I think that's a big thing because right now I think so many people want to do it because the money grab. People think, let me go into tech and make this money. But just like with anything, if you don't love what you're doing, you're going to be miserable.
Right, right, right. And to your point, previously about us being in spaces and us not really being seen, it can get intense in some of those roles. You know,
Mm-hmm.
imagine you are a developer at Meta, at Facebook or whatever, and now you're in this room with all these tech bros,
Mm-hmm.
and you're trying to keep up, but you don't really love it. That's
Mm-hmm.
going to show forth. And then you're also going to feel intimidated because they've been studying, engineering. They've been doing this, and it will shrink you a bit. So it's always important for you to step back and really get a sense of who you are and what you're drawn to, not necessarily just the financial comp.
Do you have any mentors? Because I think that's important too, especially just like you said, if you find yourself in a room like that, to have somebody that you can lean on just to, give you that encouragement or, advice based off of their own experiences.
Absolutely. Yes, mentorship is so important personally and professionally. And to be honest, I don't think that I'd be where I am without some of my mentors. I mentioned him before. My previous CEO at one of the fashion brands I worked with was kind of like everything. I mean, it was working under him, and he took me under his wing. It was kind of like an MBA that I was getting paid for.
Mm,
Um, at the time, he was called the Sage of Seventh Avenue. He was fourth generation fashion industry, knew literally everybody in the garment district of New York City. Everybody knew his name. Just an overall character, but also someone that was about their business. And he took me under his wing and really taught me the relationship building skills, how important that was, and to take risks. Because remember, I said I'm a bit risk adverse. So he kind of loosened me up quite a bit for that, and always would be beneficial with regards to some imposter syndrome and feeling like you didn't belong in rooms. Like I said, this was a man that was fourth generation garment district CEO of a company, bringing in $75 million a year, and would say, Karla, we're all pretty dumb. We're just all like figuring it out. Like
yeah.
some of us had opportunities to go to prep schools and things like that. Some of us didn't, but we're all in the same space and we're all figuring it out. Sometimes, others figure it out quicker than some others, but we're all in the same boat. So Bud Conheim, who since passed away, has definitely been one of my big mentors. And there's another person, Black woman in tech. Her name is Kirsten Austin, who is a senior Scrum Master, who has been helping me with like just keeping up with new processes as I move further into and deeper into IT and like agile methodology and project management, and just keeping the train on the track from a developmental side. She's been a scrum master for over 15 years. Gives me great sound advice, is definitely a sounding board. So those people are definitely well needed. And if you don't have a physical mentor, I definitely always recommend people to join groups join LinkedIn, join the tech groups on Facebook. There are a wealth of women, even though they might not be at arm's length, they're at phone calls length, they're at Zoom length. Make sure that you have someone in your life that will push you and tell you when you're making mistakes and you need to be put back on the track too.
Wow. Well, I hope you guys got something from today's show. Networking, finding a mentor. Um, if you want to connect with Karla, you can reach her at 1227digital.com. That's the word 12 spelled out and then the number 27digital.com. Thank you so much for being on
Thank
the show.
you. This was
It
really
was a
great.
great time, and have a good evening. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, everyone.